Excited for this conversation. Always love it when we get a chance to have him on. Monte Poole, all over the Warriors, NBC Sports Bay Area, joining us now live here on Willard and Dibs. Good evening, fine sir. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic, man. I mean, talking out all the stuff here in the postmortem for the Golden State Warriors. Let me just ask you this in as open-ended way as possible. What do you think the largest move that the Warriors are going to make this offseason is going to be?
Well, I mean, there's two moves that have to be made, and one of them involves, as you know, we've been talking for the last day or so, involves Bob Myers. And I say that Bob is an important move because he's been so good at navigating everything that needs to be navigated from Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. All four of those guys, along with Bob, that group of five has been together throughout this time. And Bob is the one guy who can go to anybody in the building there and get some things done. He's a conduit to Joe Lacob. And so he's just that guy that people go to when they need just an ear or advice. And at the same time, he's a general manager who is responsible for trying to put together the roster. So I think a lot of it is Bob's personality, but a lot of it is also just he's a good people person. And that matters in this business. And there aren't a lot of those kind of guys. So that makes him super special and super respected in that building. And if he leaves, it'll be a huge loss. The other goes back to what Draymond Green said on the podcast with Stephen A. the other day. You know, he's got to be the guy who reaches out to Jordan Poole because their situation while on the court, you know, they did okay on the court, but the Warriors didn't become the Warriors by being just okay teammates. You know, they built their culture around a certain amount of camaraderie. You know, there was more than just teammates. These guys were tight, and I think you watch Draymond and Jordan on the floor, and you don't really see much of a difference there. They do okay, but you know it's not the same. And you know how Jordan's season was. It was up, it was down, it was up, it was down. And, you know, I think people in the organization obviously think that what happened in the preseason, you know, was still in the back of his mind. And if that's the case, it's bound to affect you in some way, some type of way. So I think it's up to Draymond. You know, he understands that what he did before the season sort of put this season off on the wrong note, and it never got totally right. And I think it's best illustrated by their road record. Tight teams go on the road, and they do well because they're tight teams. When you're on the road, you're all together. Same hotel, same bus, same flight. It's a togetherness thing. When you're at home, hey, after practice, guys go their separate ways. And so on the road, if you're not a united group on the road, it shows. That 11-30 record on the road, that's kind of a clue. So I think that has to be fixed. Those are the two most important things, I think. It's not about just go out and find a big guy, go get Pascal Siakam. Yeah, these are possibilities and all of that. But and if they trade Jordan, okay, that would mean that they were getting someone who they can plug in. But I think if you're looking at the roster they had at the end of the season, I think Draymond has to fix his situation with Jordan. Do whatever it takes. I mean, if it means dinner, if it means a few days, if it means meeting with Jordan's family, whatever it takes, do what it has to be done to make this thing more than just a business relationship between two teammates.
Without a doubt, and that's a great point, Monty. And the season started with an 0-5 skid on the road, and they never recovered. Joe Lacob is looking at a $471 million total bill if everybody comes back. That includes Dante and Draymond on opt-in situations. Does that motivate the team to do something with either Draymond or Jordan or some other player?
I don't know if it motivates them because they seem to think that they had a team that was good enough to do what they did and maybe better. And if you look at the Lakers series, if Klay and Jordan shoot their norms, they probably win the series. But both of them stunk it up. And Klay really stunk it up in L.A. I mean, Klay had one really good game, so did Jordan. but Clay was atrocious in the 3 LA games, all of which were losses. And if Clay shoots his norm, that's a 7-game series. The Warriors probably win. And so I don't think they would beat Denver, but I think they were better than what you saw in the Lakers series. That was a series they could have won and did not, but it was indicative of their season. There were a lot of games they could have won and did not. So I think if you trade Jordan or trade Draymond, first of all, I've always said this about Draymond, and the possibility of trading Draymond comes up every so often for the past few years, partly because, he's a little bit of a loose cannon. But I've always thought if you trade Draymond, what's your first order of business? To go out and find another Draymond. So,
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, and so you're trading a guy who Steph and Clay know how to play with for a guy who does the same things but has to be integrated with those two guys. And I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know how well it's going to work because you've seen those video of Steph and Draymond, how they work together. It's like they can both be blindfolded and they can play together. It's just like that. There's a unity there. There's a unison there. There's a synergy. So now Jordan is a little different because he's younger, going to get a new contract. And if they were to trade Jordan, then that would mean they're trading a guy who they believe is going to be a combo guard and a star in the NBA. He's shown flashes of that. If you trade Jordan, you don't necessarily go out and get another Jordan, but you have to get someone to fill that scoring void. You do have to do that because Jordan is still going to be a bench guy. And you need someone who can come off the bench and give you buckets. And Jordan, at his best, can do that. This season, he had a few games where he was at his best. He had a lot of games where he was not. And so, you can trade one of them or both of them. If you trade both of those guys, it's almost a rebuild around Steph and Clay. And Clay only has one more year in his contract. So I just think if you trade Draymond, and people talk about trading Clay, trade Draymond or Clay, I just don't think Steph would be like, oh, that's cool. I like that. I just don't see that. So,
Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area, with us. Monte, while we're talking Jordan, you think he wants to be here or not?
He says he does. I'm not sure how much conviction there is. I think he needs this off season to kind of think about that for sure, to see if his heart is really here. I think it was. He likes who he works with, the coaches he works with, the staff members. He likes his teammates. I mean, Draymond, obviously, their lockers are next to each other, and it's a kind of I won't say I don't want to say that it's necessarily kind of it's a little bit disconcerting to know what happened between those two guys in the preseason, and that they still sit right next to each other. Their lockers are still adjacent. So I think I'm not sure Jordan knows. I know that his mom came out and came out to some games, and so I think he wants to be where he can play his best. And last season, playing here, he was not at his best. The question is whether he can rebound and come back next year, and I believe he can. I don't know if the Warriors still believe that. I think Steve Kerr still hopes that would happen, but I'm not sure it will. But if you're Joe Lacob and Bob Myers, if Bob stays, I think it's something you want to ride because they did discover the guy. They drafted the guy.
Speaking of Bob staying, what are you hearing, Monty? Are you hearing that Bob is going to stay? I mean, does he want to stay? What's the situation with Bob Myers? Could he possibly walk away from this?
Yes, he could. He could. And from what I gather, it wouldn't be because the money's not right. I think with Bob, the job is consuming. It's all consuming. And he's got to deal with Joe Lacob, who is a very, 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 very ambitious CEO. And there have been many times over the past few years, even as the Warriors were winning, when Bob had to talk Joe off the ledge, so to speak. So, and yet, he's talking to Steve and making sure Steve is good. He's talking to Draymond, making sure Draymond is good, Steph, Clay down the line. It's a huge job. It's not just, okay, I'll put together the roster and then I'll go sit in the suite and watch the games. That's not how Bob works. And so he has to decide. I wouldn't be surprised if he does walk away and not do anything for a year. I don't think he's looking for another job. Like, I got to take this job, that job. I think if he were to stay at GM, I wouldn't be surprised at all, to put it that way. If he were to leave and decide, you know what, I'm just going to escape for a year. or two. Do a podcast. Go fishing. Whatever. But I don't see him eager to leave. He grew up in the Bay Area. He lives there. His folks live here. He lives here. His family lives here. He grew up a Warriors fan. So, yeah, I don't think he wants let me get out of here and go work for, the guy in Phoenix or whatever, Matt Ishbia. I don't see that. So do I think he'll be back? I still think there's hope that he will be. I know that Steve Kerr, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson all want it to happen, but I think at the same time they all realize that it might not.
Monty, going back to, I would just love your observations with as much as you're around the team, because I feel like the Jordan Draymond thing, we were sort of told, okay, this is going to be a problem for a little while, and then maybe it got better, halfway through the season or so, and then this has come back with a ferocity that I don't know that I predicted here postseason. So what are your observations as far as that relationship and where it currently stands?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty much as Jordan put it. It's a business relationship. They're teammates. See, the thing is this. I mean, remember 2019 when Draymond and Kevin Durant got into it? And, before you know it, Kevin was on an island. But that team was a veteran team. Kevin had been in the league for a long time. Steph played. Draymond been in the league for a long time. Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, Zaza Pachulia. All these guys have been around for a long time. Jordan is 23 years old, and so it's a different dynamic when you're dealing with a guy who's 23 versus a guy who's in his 30s, like those guys all were in 2019. And that's why I think it's different. It's different for Jordan because, if you're Kevin Durant and you've been in the league for, 7 or 8 or 9 years, 10 years, and, all of a sudden there's an issue with a teammate, it's not the same as it is if you're Jordan Poole, who's not established yet in the league and has only been around for 2 or 3 years. It's different. And so that's the part that has to be figured out. Jordan is not as mature about these things as Kevin is. And the people around the team, Andre was there, but not as much. He wasn't in the rotation this year. He was in the rotation in 2019. So was Sean Livingston. These are all guys that are cool vets with level heads, and they're able to smooth things over a lot easier because they're vets. They're vets. They've seen a lot of stuff. Jordan has not. And what's worse about what Draymond did is that, can you imagine the impression that it made to guys like Kuminga and Moody and Patrick Baldwin Jr.? It's like they come into the league as teenagers and they're told Draymond's a leader, and then he does that. It's like, oh, is this what leadership looks like in the NBA? So there's all sorts of dynamics at work here. But yes, I do think that never totally went away. And how could it? Because, again, Jordan is so young and still somewhat impressionable.
Draymond was suspended for the Kevin Durant situation for a game, yet this incident prompted no suspension. Do you think the team has any remorse or regret over not rebuking Draymond more for what I thought was a much more severe incident?
Yes. Yes. I think there was some, I think there was some of that for sure. I know they talked to everybody, and they made Jordan, they talked to Jordan before they made their decision. And what's Jordan going to say? No, he's got to be suspended for a week or two. I mean, that's a tough position to put a 23-year-old guy in, to ask him to, we're trying to make a decision about what we're going to do with Draymond. What are your thoughts? I mean, what's he going to say? If he says suspend him for 2 weeks, then you got to tell Steph, this is what I wanted. You know what I mean? It's a tough situation for him. So, I think that's a situation that they probably have second-guessed themselves on several times over the course of the season as it played out.
Monty, I'd love to follow up with you on something that Joe has addressed a couple of times this year, and it's just like where that tax bill ends up. And everyone plays with that magic number of $400 million. It ended up at $370 or so this year, and Joe paid it. What's the willingness to do that again or approach maybe even a little bit more?
There's a price you pay for winning. It's hard to win the NBA if you're not in the tax. It just, that's the way it turns out. And if you're, and generally speaking, if you're in the tax and you're winning, you're probably going to stay there a while unless you got your team. Even the new CBA doesn't really make it easier for teams to sustain longevity as great, because as you win more and you win more, guys want more money. They want the content, and they're deserving of it because they've been winning. Yet, at some point, you got to say, well, this is a bridge too far. Now, on the other hand, Joe Lacob and Peter Cooper and their partners paid $450 for this team. It's now worth $7 billion. So, I mean, there is that.
Yeah.
There is that.
That's pretty decent ROI, Monty, to go from $450 to $7 bill over the course of 12 seasons. That's not bad, Monty.
And they don't do that unless they win a bunch of championships.
True.
If they're just a 50-50 team, going 41-41 every year, they're not $7 billion.
Yep. 4 rings.
Pay for it.
They'll do a couple things for you. Monty, your perspective is so well received. Thank you so much, man.
All right, guys. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks,
That's
Monty.
Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area.